Stand by. We're going live. We're going live. 10, 9, going live. 7, 6, 5, going live. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to 10 Seconds to Air. I'm Alita Guillen. When we think of communicating, we usually think of the spoken word. But what about art? Art can express feelings and ideas that we can't verbalize. Contemplating a painting or sculpture or attending a dance recital can make us feel happy or sad, or both at the same time. It can open our senses, bring us to places we just don't have words to express. My guest today is American artist Will Day, known for his large-scale paintings and bold strokes. Will's passion for art began in high school, but he didn't pursue it as a profession at first. An unfulfilling job in Wall Street and a graduate degree in architecture made him realize that his true calling was painting. His family was skeptical at first when he declared art was going to be his future, but 15 years later, his success speaks for itself. You can find his pieces all over the world in private and public collections. Will joins me now to talk about how he communicates through art, how becoming an artist changed his life, and how it can change ours as well. Hi, Will.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I can see all the pieces in your studio behind you. That's not a fake set. That's the real deal.
No, this is my warehouse studio in Boulder, Colorado.
Very nice. So we're going to kick right off and start with that first question. What goes through your mind 10 seconds before you connect to those canvases?
I love that question. And I've been thinking about this. It changes for every single canvas. But what's most important is to take a deep breath, be calm, and allow yourself the chance to let go and be ready for the surprises that I'm going to hopefully communicate onto that canvas, and be present.
So you're very open when you start. Do you have an idea of what you're going in with?
No idea. And that is the special sauce of saying it's okay to be afraid and look at a blank canvas and not know what's going to happen. The most important thing is to have paint from a place of authenticity and surprise.
Okay, so walk me through. Do you have one you're working on right now? Any of those behind you?
Yes, I work on multiple at the same time, but there are a few pieces behind me that I've been commissioned to paint for certain families and people that hired me. And so which is special, is like each painting has its own storyline. The ones behind me that I'm painting, they have a very different mystique and a different energy and a different vibe, because I'm painting for a specific space and tapping into something that is going to a place that is, I know where it's going to be. So that sometimes dictates a very different dialogue for my canvas than me just painting freely for a show or an exhibition.
Speak on that. You said that as a different dialogue. What do you mean by that?
Commission paintings are really fun and challenging. And so the dialogue between that is really, we'll go into this later, but it's unique because it's going to an individual. An individual could be a company or family or collector hired me to create a certain vibe and energy for their space. And so without giving me all these guidelines, there's certain, I think, colors that attract certain people and compositions. And so I use that as a framework to really hone in my composition to allow the client to talk to me and receive some of their beauty and their wonderful ideas, and then let them trust me to create something that's magical, different, unique, but also speaks to their voice. And that takes time, patience, and a lot of hard work.
So what's that process like? You meet with them, they explain it to you, you interpret that, and then what happens?
I think, it changes for every client, but yes, my ultimate goal is we meet, we talk, we have a dialogue, we get to know each other, and we build trust. I mean, this is all about communications, right? And so, yeah, I'm a painter, but this is more, it's very ethereal. And for me, being a big picture person, this fits perfectly into my personality. And so it's fun because I'm allowing people to kind of think a little differently and communicate a little differently through not words, through colors and shapes and emotions. To me, that's very powerful. And that brings our heart to a place of joy and freedom.
So these pieces in particular right now, what's the feeling that you're working on?
It's springtime. And so this is one of my most favorite times to create. It's the most magical time in the universe. It's a reset. It's a rebirth. Spring is new beginnings. And so the paintings I'm creating are those new sparks of colors, the yellows, the early greens, the blues, and these wonderful kind of eclectic landscapes that are abstract, that are really powerful and bold, but are very subtle.
Okay. So I have to ask you, because I shared with you in our pre-call that we had my experience with art, where my husband has one idea, I have another idea, and you know what happens? Nothing. The wall just remains a blank slate. Help me, Will Day.
Well, I think the best thing to do is to, it's scary. So how do I help you? I say, start by putting something on the wall that is not perfect. And we all are different. My wife and I have very different tastes, but I appreciate her joy for color and passion and design, right? But her idea might be different. You two have very different aesthetics. But the most important thing is to learn how to grow together and experience a composition, a painting on the wall together. And if it's done right, it grows on you. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you might say, oh, I love that piece. Well, your husband's like, nah, I don't love it, or your partner. But start with something, build a reaction, get an emotion from it, and start playing with it, because it's going to talk to you.
I love how you framed that, because sometimes I have to say, I feel guilty for not seeing what he sees. Or even maybe a little, I'm going to be honest with you right now, even maybe a little shame. Like, am I not, cultured enough that I didn't see what he saw in that? Should I be feeling bad about that?
No, I think that's a great question about how art is perceived and communicated to the universe. The whole point of art is to allow us to express and talk to a lot of different people. So there's no shame. The shame is actually not opening yourself up to say, let me listen to what that painting has to say. It's going to be you, your husband, to your neighbor, to whoever. That's the magic behind what art and two-dimensional painting really brings to the world. Is it's always evolving and changing. And as you grow, you're going to get more mature, and those messages from those canvases will come to you differently than your family or your friends.
So you might see a piece that you like one day, and it's okay if you don't like it another, in 5 years.
100%. I mean, think about when you and I were in high school and we were, learning about art and visualizations. The stuff that I thought was cool then, I look back, whoa, no. Our body and our spirit and our soul has matured to where we are in all our experiences. So we're seeing things differently now. I appreciate different things, not because I'm, where I am, but it's because I'm open to receive this creativity that allows me to be surprised at different moments of our life.
You went from Wall Street, you became not just an artist, but a legit, big time artist. Look at you. Yes, you did. Fist pump. How did you do that?
How did I do that? I did that with a lot of support from my family, right? And I mean, that's very emotional. But how I really did it was believing in myself, right? And I think that it could go back to as early as my high school or youth or family, but I think the ultimate goal is, I really truly believed that we all have a calling in life, right? And we have to act on that calling. Sometimes you do it early, sometimes you do it later in life. But I always knew I was creative. I just didn't know how to fit that creativity into a business or into a lifestyle. And so, we take all these experiences in our world and then hopefully be able to put them into a place of practicality so we can make a living and be happy and joyful. But it really started in high school, where you and I were, where we went to high school together at Cushing Academy. And I think that's just such a great story there. But it started with the teachers. The teachers like, Will, I would love for you to be, I was interested. So I took art classes.
What classes did you take? I think I took a photography class with Bob.
Yeah, I still stay in touch with him. I love him.
Good guy.
Motivator. But I took fine arts. I took painting. I took watercolor classes. I did take a photography class. I took silk screening. So I took a lot of classes. And I think that why that was so successful is that I think you and I were able to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. And they're like, come in, let's explore. Don't be afraid. And I think I get goosebumps thinking about this. And I was like, wow, I was so taught to say, oh, you have to take these 5 classes before you can take this other thing. You got to do this, this, and this. I mean, it's a metaphor for life. It's like, you and I, we just jumped in. We had the desire. We had great teachers who fostered these relationships, who said, go for it. It's okay to fail and not be perfect. And I think art really gave me that courage and those classes and foundations for me to say, you know what? I am an innovator. I can create, and it's okay to not be perfect. And that was the start. And then there's a huge story behind all this. But
Well, go ahead. Well, huge story. What do you mean huge story behind all this? Don't leave anything out.
I think, so that continued and fostered on to a passion that said, you know what? I'd love to figure out how to be an artist the rest of my life. But, I went to college, and I think, and that was amazing. Went to Ohio Wesleyan University, and I did take a few art classes there too. But I diverted my creativity into other things that were more traditional in the academic world, and that was okay. But the ultimate goal was, I knew in the back, in my heart of hearts, that I was a creative spirit. So I had to find other ways to be creative, and that's one of the messages for all of us is like, being creative doesn't mean you're just a painter. Creativity and communication is about learning how to adapt to situations you're in and make the most of what you have and keep moving forward. But the ultimate goal is I'm an explorer. I'm an adventurer. That was my creativity. And Cushing and Ohio Wesleyan allowed me to travel abroad. And that was just as powerful because I got to learn about communities, language, people. And that kind of gave me a purpose that said, wow, I want to figure out how to communicate with all these different cultures and histories. And how do I do it? And as I got more mature, I started doing that through art. And all those places I've been and traveled are impacted in how I paint today. And so not only going and traveling abroad, I also served in the U.S. Peace Corps in Tunisia, North Africa. And that was a game changer. That's where I was like, put myself in a very vulnerable situation. And I didn't know how to speak Arabic, and I had to learn. I was assigned to a community in the middle of the Sahara Desert for a town called Spicha. And I was like, wow, okay, game on. What do I do, and how do I connect and communicate with people I don't understand their religion and culture, but I'm open to receive and be surprised at what's going to come my way. And that is what really I'm all about.
How was that experience? I mean, you said it was incredible, but what was it like being on the ground there and trying to communicate? I mean, you learned Arabic. That's not easy.
That's not easy. So how that worked was I made I set goals and said, I'm going to commit myself to learn how to speak Arabic, because you're the only American, you're the only Westerner, the Peace Corps, you're assigned a community and you've got tasks and duties, but you're not with a group of people, you're on your own. And so I figured out really clearly that this part of the world truly inspired me. And so I wrote, I did poetry, I painted, I sketched, I did murals for the community. Every day I said, I'm going to be creative in that form. And that, by building on that foundation and structure, gave me more confidence and more ability to kind of try new things. And I couldn't stop creating. I was like, what's going on? Granted, I didn't have a family and, money was very scarce, but I was in a place to say, I'm going to do some new things and I'm going to be as creative as I can with the limited amount of resources I have.
What did you do when you got back from the Peace Corps, and what did you do as a profession?
And so I came back from the Peace Corps after 2 years. And in 1996, basically, I was like, all right, I'm a type of guy that loves extremes, and I dive into this. And so I was still young, and I wanted to learn more about the capital markets and get back to America. And for 2 years, I didn't cut my hair, so I looked like Fabio or very cool. And I was like, wow, I lost a lot of weight, and I'm pretty trying to embrace this new me. But then again, it's like, oh, I'm back into a new world. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, and I was like, you know what? I want to go to Wall Street. So I went and said, all right, time for me to put on a new, go on 2.0 and learn about how to make money and learn about that type of relationship. And I loved it. So I went went way to Wall Street, worked for a company called Bloomberg Financial Markets, and became a sales rep, and loved it. Never turned back. Cut my hair. How to get a suit, and take the train in, and kind of fall into place of what the next steps were to be an active participant in our society.
And so did you park that artistic side of you someplace, or were you on the side doing some artsy things?
I parked it on the side, but remember one of the conversations we might have had earlier was like, what we need to do is figure out how to be creative in those moments of wherever you are. So, being and working in Wall Street, it was fast paced and very competitive, which I loved. But I also had to figure out there was a part of me that was creative. So I found some divisions and areas of Bloomberg that I could be super creative in, with colors and numbers and spreadsheets. And that was fun for a while. But in my heart, I'm like, I'm missing something. I got to take it to another level. And so I struggled because I wanted something different, but Bloomberg was a great foundation for me to learn how to interact, participate, to communicate on different levels, and be in a competitive environment.
Yeah. So you also say that you had some inflection points. 9/11 happened, 2007 happened. What happened 9/11?
Yeah, that's a sad moment, obviously, for a lot of us in the world. So I was getting married to my wife, Amy, and I left Bloomberg, and then I went back to get my master's in architecture at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And within the first month, obviously 9/11 happened in September. And so I was living in New York City, and my wife still worked in Wall Street, and she worked on Tower 2 in the 78th floor where the second plane went into, and she was late to work. And so she survived. And it's still one of the most,
Wow.
heartfelt things that have happened in my life. That's been so, and a lot of people. And so why are we bringing this up? Because that was a turning point to say, we could have passed. My wife could have been on those floors, and we would never have had this life that we had. And so at that moment, I was thinking it's time to change. I have to change. So I knew I wanted to pursue creativity and pursue a different way to connect with the world. And 9/11 was that major spark that said, I don't want to have any regrets. I mean, if I was taken out, I would have missed out on all this new adventures and surprises. And so that was a major turning point to say it's time to show up and do something different and really impact the world in a very positive way. And I thought, and I still believe, that that my art and creativity, like many artists, are really changing the way people see, view, and communicate.
When that happened, is that when you went to architect school?
So late August, I was signed up, but I didn't know 9/11 was going to happen.
Right.
And then boom, there it happened. And then I got married a month later in New York City, right there in Central Park. So we were in the heart of it. And that was really, really painful for a while. But we lived through it. And like every experience, I think for anything, you almost have to go through the, I say hell or death to resurrect, to really bring yourself to a place of clarity and joy and appreciation. And not knowing that, that's what came about from not only me, but many other people in the universe.
Yeah. How does that moment influence your art?
I think that's a good question. I think it comes and goes, throughout my time period. And obviously every September, that hits us hard. And so I think all those emotions over those years, they come back, right? And so, yeah, it's in my art, the pain and suffering, but also it's a appreciation for, our country and all the people that have, passed.
Mm-hmm. 1999 to 2007. What happens during that time for you?
Let me take a deep breath. I think, many things happen, but I was in transition as I was building a family, changing jobs, dealing with 9/11. I moved across country from New York City after 2000, and I graduated from Pratt Institute in 2004. But I moved from New York City, Brooklyn to Los Angeles and became a full-time architect. And so that time period was a time period of confusion, discovery, we basically had 2 kids at that time. And so my whole life was in this major transition where I'm obviously a father now. I have a new job. I'm living in a new city. I'm trying to deal with these emotions from, the history of 9/11 and all that impact, where my wife was right there. And so I think it was a time to discover, and also a major time of change. And so that was a huge discovery. And then also in 2007, 2008, we moved from Los Angeles to Boulder, Colorado, where I am right now.
What happens in 2007? What's that aha moment where you say, you know what, honey, I'm going to paint? And she says, I've been waiting for you to say that, Will.
Wait for you to tell me that. I think, we always joke about this, but yeah, 2007 was the crutch of, oh boy, what are we doing? I moved from Los Angeles, I moved the whole family from LA to here. Well, what was the point? What happened? Well, 2008, another financial crisis happened. And to us, that was the biggest thing since the Great Depression, right? And so at that point, 2007, 2008, I was still working as an architect and then got laid off. And that's where I said, hey, you know what? For me to be happy and joyful, I'm going to be an artist. She's like, that is ridiculous. What are you talking about? What do you mean? An artist? Where do you get what? She knew I was creative, and she knew I was aching to kind of express myself. But a full-time job to be a painter and travel the world, and it's like unknown, and their hours. Is it 9 to 5 job? What is that? So I think that was a real stretch for their family to say, okay, good luck. Just go to the basement and start painting. What? So I think that moment was, and we chatted a little about this, is like, you can't just go out and just say, hey, I'm going to do this. There has to be some structure and balance, and, there's got to be some accountability, right? So as I said, hey, honey, guess what? I'm going to be an artist. Amy, aren't you going to love it? She's like, okay, this is not happening. We're going to the divorce court, and I'm out of here. She's like, I can't see you. Like, you had structured jobs. You had a salary. You're doing this. I'm working. Like, now we have 2 young kids. Like, that's ridiculous. Who wants to be an artist in the worst time period this country has ever experienced. So this world in 2000, dumb idea. That's not going to be. So I said, trust me, let's communicate about this. I do have a plan. So I formed, 5 to 6 individuals that were very successful or believed in me. And we started to build structure and accountability for my art business. And that generated a huge amount of success and joy and happiness and understanding for what I'm doing instead of just being in the basement painting.
But you were in the but you did go into the basement and paint, right? I mean, you had to create something. I
went into the basement and started painting. And so you got to use your resources, what you have in front of you. Yeah, my basement happened to be unfinished and I could throw paint and go crazy and, be like I'm at the Big Lebowski, just run around doing cool stuff down in the basement. But at the end of the day, there's got to be some sales. There's got to be some connection to community. There's got to be a driven factor for productivity. And so I'm very motivated and driven, and that turned into a wonderful kind of model. And eventually I outgrew my basement and moved into like the space I'm in right now, this massive warehouse where I can be free and liberate myself. But
what were those first pieces like? What were you creating?
I love that. I mean, I remember my first sale and those paintings. I started doing these amazing flower paintings and some landscapes. You start from the beginning, and I started with some really cool primary colors, and my paintings were small. And I always had this urge to go big because when I was younger, one of the things my parents used to do on my birthday, before I would go back to school, since we had a long vacation, we'd go to the Museum of Modern Art, and I would walk around and see all the Pollocks and the Koonings and Basquiat's and Helen Frankenthalers. I'm like, look how huge those paintings are. But that was one of the things that I always knew I wanted to be there. And I wanted to create large, powerful, impactful, abstract paintings. And so I knew when I started to get to that point, I had to move out of my basement and move from painting like really nice still lifes to very crazy Jackson Pollock style paintings. And that's kind of how I started, was just learning how to paint very free and action painting like Pollock did. And that gave me a lot of chance to sort of explore. So explore with freedom of flowers and landscapes is how I started.
What is action painting?
Good question. I mean, action painting is just working pretty quickly with a lot of different tools. And, Jackson Pollock coined it, but, he stood over his canvas and was able to move throughout that canvas with a lot of different energy and a lot of different, aggressive stroke making. And so it's fluid, it's constantly evolving, and it's fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of your videos when you paint, and it looks very physical.
I mean, I know you're looking at me pretty physical. I should have been in the NFL. I know. I don't miss that calling.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't put anything past you at this point.
Right. It is physical. Now that I've matured in my years here on this earth, I have to be careful because there are things that are, my back hurts, my knees are, I'm on concrete floors. I paint very large. I roll out the canvases kind of like what Helen Frankenthaler did. She would just go out and roll these massive canvases out and stain them. But it's physical. You're moving all throughout that canvas, and you're moving throughout the space, and you're using your arms, you're on your knees, you're on your backs, you're doing everything. You're on ladders. I'm on lifts. It's intense.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's important because it's fun and it's never the same.
So now when people see your art, what feeling do you want them to have?
I want them to feel everything, So it's hard to say because it's not like when I paint, I don't say, oh, this one's going to evoke love. This one's going to be, my nature. This one is about springtime. No, what I want them to see is be able to walk into this painting and look around this piece and say, wow, I've never seen that before. That's powerful. That's uplifting. That is that has so much emotion. Look at the temperatures and that in the intensity of that, and maybe bring them to a place that they used to find joy and love in their world. And that is exciting.
What modern day painters do you follow now?
Quite a good question. There's quite a few. I love Joe Bradley is a very well-known abstract artist. I think he's been able to, through the test of time, to take color, shapes, and compositions and really use it in a very powerful way. Sterling Ruby is another one. These are some very well-known LA-based artists. Mark Bradford, incredible scale. He's in a lot of museums around the world. And they all have their different stories, and they're all different individuals. And the other one is Keyhine Wiley, really famous with his portrait paintings of everyday individuals, and brings beauty to the world through these different people that probably have never been seen before. It's just fascinating that I love how art is not supposed to be judgmental. It's supposed to be very emotional, and anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. And my success is not, hopefully people don't view it as a place of, well, you're not in a museum, you're not successful. It doesn't matter. What is successful is actually showing up every day, coming to a place that you can create, and learning how to communicate those emotions to the world, so you let out and let go and allow people to discover and be free and be playful about it.
Yeah. So how do you keep that openness so that you can create?
That's a good question, because I think it always evolves. I'm always, as we mature and we have different responsibilities, you always have to find ways to be still. Be still in the universe, be calm. And you ask, what do I do before each painting? I take a deep breath. I try to meditate. I'm calm. And that's what I have to do every time I show up here. So it's 10 seconds before I paint, but it's also 10 seconds for me to just walk around my studio and say, hey, what's going to happen today? I don't have the answers, but I'm ready to work. And so how do I stay motivated? I stay motivated because I know every day is going to bring something new, and I want to see what that's going to be. And that is what I thrive on, because it's the unknown. It's the surprises. It's not like, here's your 9-to-5 job. Well, you got to keep plugging away and let's keep doing those blue horizon landscapes,
Right.
Boom. No. I think it's the mystery of, like, I haven't even started. I've been painting 15 years. I'm like, wow, I can't wait to see when I'm 70 or 80. Like, this is amazing. Like, I'm looking down the line and saying, yeah, I've done a lot of cool, great art, and got a lot of people have collected my art and have been able to make a living out of it. But man, there is so much more that I am so much more hopeful for, because I'm continuing to learn and grow from this.
How long does it take you to make one of the large scale paintings?
You know what? The simple answer is, I'm 52 now, so it has taken me 52 years to show up and paint. And so people are like, wow, that was like 15 minutes on that. Well, that's wrong, because I'm able to take all my experiences to show up and be in front of that blank canvas and say, you know what? It may take, 2 years, it may take 2 months, it may take an hour.
Okay.
I am all over the place, but I'm really cognizant that my 52 years have given me time to absorb all these experiences, so I can create when I need to, when I'm in the right place to be the most authentic self. And that could be 10 minutes or it could be 2 years.
Take me through your day. What does your day look like?
You
just mouthed, oh, wow.
Wow. Well, because it's funny. When I was starting out, people were like, okay, as an artist, you're going to have 2 days, you're going to do business development, marketing, and then the other 3 days you're going to paint, and then maybe the 6th day you're just going to be in the calls, and so which all makes sense. But I think a day in the life as an artist, I've been doing this 15 years now. Each year changes. But most important thing is I show up. I like coming here early. It could be 5 a.m. I like painting before the world starts. And I like just being one with my space, with not a lot of distraction, noise, or the news, or haven't drank coffee yet. I just show up and I try to be a conduit for innovation, creativity, be out in nature, because I want to see the light. Painting is all about light. So Boulder is this wonderful, magical place that allows us to explore what light's about. And that's where my paintings, I'm trying to see these relationships. So I have to be outdoors. And then, evening times, obviously you've got a family, and I spend time and dinner with them every night. And sometimes I come back to the studio and paint. But I don't always try to do that because I don't want to get burned out.
Right.
I'm in the long haul. It's exhausting.
So let's get back to, full circle. You tell your wife you want to do this. You do it. We're 15 years in now. What's she saying now?
I'm like, well, how do you like me now?
Yeah, how do you like me now?
How do you like me now? I'm killing it. What is she saying now? She's obviously very happy and proud. And she's still pretty amazed that this has kind of been our path. I think what she's saying now is like, what's next? And that's all fair. Like, what are we going to do to continue to be productive, be responsible, be creative, and learn how to be together? Our kids are growing up and they're going off to college. And so what's next is how, like, everybody may talk about this, is like, what do we do together to communicate in a very loving way? Mm-hmm. And brings us back to a place where we were when we first got married.
Right.
And yeah, my art is my job. It's my business. It's my passion, but that's one dimensional. The most important thing for me is to be connected to my family and to be creative with them and to really teach and learn and figure out how to leave a positive legacy for them and be a role model for my family. Mm. Whatever happens to the art, that's amazing. And if it goes in these great museums, the Museum of Modern Art, the Guggenheim, the Louvre, thumbs up.
Anyone in your family also artists?
Yeah, that's a good question. My brother was always a very talented artist. I learned from him, my older brother. My son is very creative, and my daughter is super creative. Different levels. My daughter is a great singer. She's a good performer. She's a good communicator. She also knows how to draw and paint. My son can do that too, So, and they're at different stages, And I have to appreciate their journey, even though my studio is always open. Come on in, bring your friends, and let's have a good time here at Dad's studio.
Yeah. What advice do you give them? Because it sounds like people didn't say to you, yeah, Will, go be an artist. That sounds like a great idea. You didn't get that message.
No, I don't. And it was a different society, different culture you and I grew up in, at that time. But I think the biggest message for, kids, and I try to share this, with my kids, is that it's okay not to know what you want to be in this world. What I want you to do is to go out, try many things, learn how to fail, and learn how to get up from that failure. Once you do that, you'll start figuring out what you're really good at. And that will help you build confidence and courage to be the leaders that God created you to be. And I remember one of the tips when I was I love golf, and during high school and college, I caddied a lot to make money, and it was awesome. And I remember I was with these executives from this baseball team, just happened to be at the club, and I was like, I'm always asking, hey, can I get a job? What do you think? What advice would you give a college graduate or boom, boom, boom? He's like, you're 22. I said, yeah. He's like, go out and do as many different cool jobs as you can until you're 30. And when you're 30, when all those jobs and things have failed or you've succeeded, then I'm ready for you to talk to me. Go get those experiences, travel the world, do whatever you want, but have some accountability, but learn again. learn how to fail.
Yeah.
And don't hesitate. Because if you're reluctant to go try new things, you're never going to be the leader that the world wants to see. And these are the people we want. We want to know people who not only have tried things, but haven't been in one job the whole time. Haven't, been given, hey, you've been a politician for 50 years. Like, get out of there, change it up, and be something else. And then we can talk. And you know what? The world needs that. Go, try to qualify for the U.S. Open. Go run a triathlon.
Yeah.
Who knew you could do that?
Right.
Well, you probably didn't know that because the way you were brought up, or your education, or your profession said that doesn't work.
Right.
So, I hope that makes sense.
Great advice. No, I think that's great advice. We all try to do that. And as you get older, you see things so much clearer than you did when you were younger, right? When you have all that pressure on you. Now you're older and you're like, whatever, I'm going to try anything. At least you hope you get to that point.
Yeah. And then it's like, you hear all these cliches, but it's like, obviously, I'm a very sensitive guy still, so I care about what people say about me, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And humans, that's our nature. But as we get older, it really doesn't matter. And those expressions and what people say or write about you, doesn't mean anything, and it's for someone else's ego.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say to yourself, there's a reason they need to say that, because they need that.
Yeah, it's about them, not about me.
About them.
Right.
So bit of advice is, don't worry about what the critiques say. And I've had some people write about me in the art world. I'm like, wow, it is ugly. Like,
yeah. Does it get ugly?
It gets ugly.
Yeah.
And people want to get on the ugly train and start bashing you as soon as they can. And I was like, wow, okay, I've learned a lot from this business.
Wow. How do you handle that?
That's a great question. I remember the first time, and I don't even want to say the name because everybody knows this person. A couple art critics bashed a lot of individuals, and I was one of them. I didn't even ask for it. And I was like, interesting. How do I handle that? I showed all the comments to my wife, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is really devastating. I'm like, it is, but it's about them.
Right.
It's not about me.
I have just a couple more questions for you. You've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. One of them is, when people look at art in general, as an artist, I would love for you to tell people like me, what should I look for, or how should I present myself in order to get the most out of what I'm looking at?
I think that's really unique to each individual. What you should do is, you should show up and look at the painting, be still, be calm, and let that emotion and vibe just speak to you. So what you should do is just have no expectations, arrive in front of this canvas or at the show, and be still. And be still and let that work speak to you. Don't come in with judgments. You may know the artist and all the history. Clear that out of the way and be one with that canvas. And you'll be surprised what your feelings and emotions and how they're evoked. But you won't feel that if you show up with expectations. And remember that we talked a little about this in my TED Talk. And that is like, how do you clear yourself to be part of the world when you need to? Everybody's talking. Paintings have a language of their own. And for you to really absorb all these amazing good and bad stories, your job is to take away those expectations, be present, and basically you want to start fresh with a whole different narrative and see what happens.
I love it.
As I said, I always love figuring out how to communicate my messages and my narrative through the paintings. Will they change each season?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a seasonal painter. Right now, what did I talk about? Spring is my favorite. It's the rebirth. My paintings, I birth paintings to the universe to share these emotions, to say, I want you to hopefully feel this, this, and this. But I don't know what I'm going to feel until I show up and become clear and present with not only myself, but with the canvas. Because it's really about the canvas. It's not Will's ego here. I'm a conduit to share with the world through colors, textures, strokes, scale, to allow you to say, hey, you need to be healed. You need to feel happy. You need to feel anger.
Mm-hmm.
The artists, we're able to do that in a very holistic way. But when the ego gets in there and they start painting for other reasons, it changes. And right now I still have the freedom of this purity of just painting for the world without any expectations and other people tell me what to do. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I'm still pretty well unknown. And that quietness allows me to still play in a very joyful way that, no, I am making an impact, but I may not be in a museum yet. My time will come, and now I'll have a very different voice to the world.
Anything I didn't ask you that you want to mention?
I think I'm always trying to say, well, how do I help and teach the generation to not be fearful, but always be able to say it's okay to create, and it doesn't have to go to a museum. But I think the ultimate conversation, what you and I talked about, was communicating through art. Remember, that's been done through history. And for me, going back to the Egyptians, the Romans, and most importantly, the Renaissance, in the 1500s, is essential to teach us how we are today and remind ourselves that all these types of incredible artists have given us tools and knowledge and inspiration for us to lead a better life. And we need to be grateful and thankful for all those people that have come before us. And when I paint, you asked me what I do before again, I give gratitude to the masters of the past and the present, and also give gratitude to the things that will come. And that is a metaphor for whatever you choose to, whatever line of work you work in, just to remind yourself it's not about you. We're moving things forward in a way that can be very positive and impactful for the next generation. And that's how we should be thinking.
Well, I can't wait to see what comes next. I can't wait to walk in and see that piece in the museum or in my house or wherever I may see it. I look forward to that. It's so fun to follow you. It's so fun to see what you're working on. It's so dynamic. You're an inspiration. I mean, you're really an inspiration, not just in what you do, but how you talk about it. It's really nice. So thank you for that gift to the world.
You're very kind. I see it differently. That's why I appreciate these, because we just had a nice conversation, but I also want to be realistic and know that this is about sharing. And if we don't know how to share, we're going to miss out on some of the joys in life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to have all your information to share in the show notes, Will Day Art, and I'll make sure all of that is in there, and you can share as much as you want to anybody that I'm communicating with, that's for sure. Thank you again, Will Day. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.